Today, we're going to break down a really fascinating study from molecular psychiatry. It dives deep into the biological roots of severe, debilitating procrastination. Now, this research really challenges the old idea that procrastination is just a bad habit. Instead, it reframes the whole thing through the lens of neurogenetics. So let's jump in and look at the evidence.
Okay, first things first. To really get this study, we have to be super clear about what we're talking about. This isn't about you putting off your laundry until tomorrow. The researchers here are zeroing in on a very specific, almost clinical level phenomenon. And there's a huge distinction to make here. On one hand, you've got your everyday procrastination. We all do it. But on the other, you have what this paper calls psychopathological procrastination. This is something else entirely. We're talking about a debilitating condition where you persistently and irrationally put things off, and it causes real uncontrollable distress. It's estimated to affect about 15 to 20% of adults and is linked to some serious health risks, which is why scientists are starting to see it as a potential brain disorder.
So, the big question is, how do you even begin to investigate the biology of a condition like this? Well, the researchers used a really powerful long-term study design with a very special group of people.
Here's how they did it. They followed 71 pairs of twins over a long period. They started way back in 2015, collecting detailed brain scans from these twins when they were just adolescents. Then, 8 years later, when the twins were young adults, they were assessed for symptoms of this severe procrastination. And this design is brilliant because it allowed the researchers to ask a fascinating question. Could the brain structure in your teenage years actually predict this behavior years down the line?
All right, so this brings us to their first massive finding, which gets right to the heart of the matter. Is this trait actually hardwired into our DNA?
And the crucial number that popped out of their analysis is this, 0.47. This is what's known as the heritability estimate. So by comparing identical twins with fraternal twins, they were able to figure out how much of this trait comes down to nature versus nurture. And what they found was that 47%, almost half, of the reasons some people struggle with this condition can be chalked up to their genes. That's a really significant heritability, and it confirms that there's a real genetic basis for it.
Okay, so we've established a genetic link. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. But the next logical question is, where does this genetic risk actually show up in the brain? What's the physical signature?
This is where the predictive power of the study really shines. They found that physical differences in the teenage brain, specifically in two areas, the nucleus accumbens, which is a key hub for reward, and the precuneus, which is involved in how we think about ourselves, could actually predict who would develop psychopathological procrastination 8 years later as an adult.
And this led the researchers to the absolute pivotal question of the entire study. We know the behavior is heritable, and we know there's a predictive brain marker. But is the link between the two also genetic? In other words, are the very same genes pulling the strings on both the brain structure and the behavior?
The answer they found is, well, it's pretty staggering. It all comes down to this number, 0.89. That's the genetic correlation.
I mean, just think about that. A genetic correlation of 0.89 is nearly a perfect one-to-one match. It's basically saying that the genetic factors that influence the physical structure of your brain's reward hub are almost the exact same genetic factors that contribute to the procrastinating behavior itself. It's a massive finding.
But it doesn't stop there. They drilled down even deeper, to the molecular level. It turns out those brain regions they identified are packed with pathways for specific brain chemicals, and their analysis showed a significant link to the dopaminergic and serotonergic systems. You know, your brain's key systems for reward processing and mood regulation.
And they went even deeper still. By looking at which genes were actually being switched on and off in these brain regions, they pinpointed the exact biological processes that were going haywire. And the results pointed to a fundamental problem with the cell's internal shipping system, the way molecules get moved around inside neurons. And finally, they added one last, crucial layer to the biological picture: neuroinflammation. They found that genes related to key inflammatory pathways were also highly active. This suggests that a haywire immune response inside the brain might also be part of the underlying problem.
So when you take all these different pieces of evidence, the genetics, the brain structure, the molecular pathways, they all start to fit together. They paint a single, very cohesive picture.
The study lays out a really clear causal chain. It all starts with a person's genetic makeup.
That leads to dysregulation at the molecular level, messing with neurotransmitters and immune systems. Over time, this contributes to physical differences in key brain regions during development, which ultimately shows up as the behavior we call psychopathological procrastination. And here it is, the complete model, the neurogenetic dysregulation model. It brings everything together to completely reframe how we see this condition. It's not a moral failing. It's not a lack of willpower. It's a subclinical brain disorder centered on reward processing, with clear origins in how the brain develops.
So let's wrap this up by boiling it all down. What are the absolute most important take-home messages from this incredible study?
Okay, number 1, psychopathological procrastination is moderately heritable. Number 2, you can actually predict it based on brain structure differences in teenagers. Number 3, that brain structure and the behavior share an incredibly strong genetic foundation. Number 4, the biology involves problems with dopamine, serotonin, and neuroinflammation. And finally, number 5, all of this evidence means we should really think of this as a subclinical neurodevelopmental brain disorder.
And that leaves us with a really provocative final thought to chew on. If severe procrastination really is a condition with deep roots in how our brains are built, how should that fundamentally change the way we approach trying to treat it?
For anyone who wants to dive into the nitty-gritty themselves, here are the references for the original paper. Thanks so much for joining this explainer.